Hello and a very warm welcome. You're watching WION World is One. My name is Molly Gambhir. A quick look first at the top stories we are tracking at this hour. The United States hits China with new trade restrictions and sanctions banning virtually all imports from China's northwestern Xinjiang region over concerns of prevalent forced labor. Russia unveils security guarantees it wants from the West, including promises to give up any military activities in Ukraine and not to expand the NATO military alliance further, says the Western response still now is not promising. The Russian envoy to India says that Prime Minister Modi, President Putin and Chinese President Xi Jinping can meet in the near future, and Russia would prefer for such a meeting to be an in-person event. India reports more than 100 Omicron cases across 11 states. Health officials say the latest COVID-19 variant may soon outpace its predecessor, Delta. Facebook's parent company bans several surveillance companies for spying on at least 50,000 users on its platforms. The company has now taken down 1,500 Facebook and Instagram pages linked to such groups. Amid a crop of disputes, the United States has been ramping up pressure on China. The U.S. Senate has unanimously voted to make it the first country virtually banning all imports from Xinjiang. The bill barring imports from China's Xinjiang has received final congressional approval. The Senate vote sends the bill to President Joe Biden. The Uyghur Forced Labor Protection Act would ban all imports from Xinjiang unless businesses can prove that they were producing without forced labor. Some U.S. businesses had voiced unease about the act. Since Xinjiang is a major source of cotton, an estimated 20% of the garments are imported each year into the U.S. The American government says more than 1 million Uyghurs and other Turkic-speaking Muslims are incarcerated in the Xinjiang camps. China is accused of rooting out their Islamic cultural traditions and forcibly assimilating them into China's Han majority. The United States has described the campaign as genocide. Along with Australia, Britain and Canada, America has planned a diplomatic boycott of the Beijing Winter Games next year over the issue and to clamp down on China's treatment of the Uyghur minority. The U.S. has also slapped new sanctions on dozens of Chinese companies. The Biden government fired off new sanctions over surveillance concerns in Xinjiang. The rights groups say China has been honing new technologies in artificial intelligence and DNA tracking to keep tabs on the Uyghurs. The companies hit by the Treasury Department sanctions include top drone maker DJI Technology. It is by far the world's largest producer of consumer drones. DJI captures more than 70% of the global market. Other companies targeted include Shaman Mea Peco Information. It has developed a mobile application to track files on the individual's phones. The next is Cloud Walk Technology. It was developed to recognize the faces of the Uyghurs and the Tibetans. Separately, sensitive exports to the Academy of Military Medical Sciences have been restricted. 11 of its research institutes are part of the restrictions. The curbs come over its biotechnology work. including purported brain control weaponry. The U.S. Treasury Department added them to a list of entities suspected of having Chinese military links. The Chinese embassy in Washington called the actions unwarranted suppression that violated free trade rules. It further added that Beijing would be taking all essential measures to uphold the interests of the Chinese companies and the research institutions.
U.S. actions have seriously undermined the principles of market economy and international economic and trade rules, seriously harmed the interests of Chinese organizations and companies. Beijing is strongly dissatisfied and resolutely opposes the actions. We urge the United States to immediately rectify its mistaken ways. China will take all necessary measures to resolutely safeguard the legitimate rights of Chinese organizations and companies.
The latest string of actions could worsen the already rocky relations between Beijing and Washington. Remember, leaders of the two world powers held a virtual meeting last month in an attempt to establish guardrails and prevent the two superpowers from sliding towards conflict. And for more on this, our correspondent Susan Teherani is with us on the broadcast from New York. Susan, the United States has imposed fresh sanctions against China over human rights abuses in Xinjiang. With these new measures, is the crunch in supply likely to get worse?
Yeah. It may. We've already seen the effects on the market, and there was a sense of hesitation initially by the Biden administration because of this very issue and pressure by corporations. But, these abuses have been so widespread on the part of China that it was very difficult for the United States to turn a blind eye on them. And with this bill set forth and led by Senator Marco Rubio, it was really very easy and no-brainer for President Biden to really go ahead with it for the Biden administration. And he really needed this sort of push regarding China and this gain, despite the fact that there really has been a uptick in the severity of relations between the two sides. And, you talk about supply chain. That's only one part of the issue. This issue and these sanctions are really going to harm China's economy a lot more than it would the international economy and the U.S. economy. There is really a push right now to use American-made products on the one hand. I mean, you see the things that will be affected. You have raw cotton, which, yes, 20% is coming from that region. Gloves, tomato products, silicone, fishing gear, and a range of solar products. But right now, America's problems really is inflation, is domestic, and I think that's where the focus is going to be. And also, the issue that the United States will have with companies in Xinjiang is going to be that they want to see robust monitoring of their bases in that region. And moving forward, that's going to be to the benefit of the United States.
Right. Now, this said, Cold War between China and the U.S. Continues to worsen. China has vowed to respond against the American sanctions. What do you have to say about the two world powers' worsening relationship?
Yeah, it's relations are at a critical point between the two sides. Some call it at an all-time low, considering the fact that we did recently see that, call between Xi Jinping and the Russian president, Vladimir Putin, sort of trying to work together, although informally, against the West on the one hand, and on the other hand, these set of sanctions against China on the part of the United States. We're seeing this administration take somewhat an aggressive stance. Sorry, it's very windy here. Against China on the one hand, but then on the other hand, we see China's rhetoric as well. So yes, the situation is tense, but then China hopes that with its Winter Olympics, it will sort of one-up the United States. So we'll wait and see. From a very windy New York City, I'm going to send it back to you, Molly.
Wait and see, indeed. We can leave it there for the moment. Thanks very much for those updates. Susan Teherani getting us those updates from New York. The United States, meanwhile, has released its country-wise report on terrorism for the year 2020. The report takes a detailed look at the counter-terrorism environment last year and provides insight on important issues in the fight against terrorism. The report highlights that terror groups remained a persistent and pervasive threat worldwide, and although ISIS lost all the territory it had seized in Iraq and Syria, the organization and its branches continue to mount a worldwide terrorism campaign. It also said that ISIS affiliates outside Iraq and Syria caused more deaths in 2020 than in any previous year. In Pakistan, terror groups targeting India continue to operate. The report says the Imran Khan government did not act against known terrorists, which includes the Jaish-e-Mohammed chief, the UN-designated terrorist Masood Azhar, and Sajid Mir, the project manager of the 2008 Mumbai attack. The report also noted that some madrasas in Pakistan continue to teach violent extremist doctrine and fail to register with the government, provide any sources of income, or comply with the laws regarding accepting foreign students. The report also acknowledged that while Pakistan made some progress towards completing its Financial Action Task Force action plan, but did not complete all the action plan items and therefore remained on the FATF grey list. Shifting focus to Israel, the report said that Israel faced threats from Hezbollah and other Iran-backed groups in the north and northeast frontier. As many as 150,000 rockets and missiles were aimed at Israel. To the south, Israel faced threats from terror organizations including Hamas, Palestinian Islamic Jihad, and the ISIS Sinai. Rocket attacks originating from Gaza resulted in several injuries and property damage. The report also notes several sporadic attempts to infiltrate Israel from Gaza by the armed militants, none of which resulted in Israeli casualties. Specifically in the West Bank, the report notes that US-designated terrorist organization Hamas remained active to various extents. Hamas also maintained control of Gaza in 2020. Several militant groups, including Sunni extremist groups and the PIJ, launched rocket attacks against Israel from Gaza. The report also notes that the Palestine Authority security forces in the West Bank acted to constrain the ability of the terror organizations to conduct attacks on Israel. Tensions continue to simmer, meanwhile, between Russia and the West. This amid possibilities of a Russian invasion of Ukraine. In the latest, Russia has unveiled the security guarantees that it demands from the West. The Russian Foreign Ministry said that it has sought assurances from the West to give up any military activity in Ukraine and Eastern Europe and not to expand the NATO military alliance further, adding that the response from the West till now has not been promising. The developments come after the European Union leaders gathered in Brussels on Thursday and insisted that there was an urgent need for Russia to de-escalate tensions caused by the military build-up along its border with Ukraine. Both the EU and the NATO's North Atlantic Council reiterated their previous threat of imposing sanctions on Moscow.
Our concern related to Russia's military build-up on the eastern Ukrainian borders are well known. Our position is very clear. We maintain our call on Russia to de-escalate tensions and refrain from any further aggression. We would like to be in a situation where relations with Russia are good, but this is very much depending on the choices made by Moscow. So let there be no doubt, if Russia were to move against Ukraine, the Union will be in a position to take sanctions that could extract a massive cost. We have done our work in that respect.
Although no sanctions were debated at the summit, diplomats have said new measures could include targeting Russian oligarchs, banning EU transactions with private Russian banks, and possibly cutting all Russian banks from the SWIFT network that is the bedrock of international money transfers. For now, the EU leaders have agreed to renew for 6 months existing economic sanctions imposed on Russia in 2014. The ongoing sanctions are in response to Moscow's annexation of Crimea. At present, there are reports of Russian buildup on the border with Ukraine. There are nearly 175,000 Russian troops deployed near the border, speaking on which the NATO chief has said that there was no sign that the Russian military buildup was slowing down. Ukraine's President Volodymyr Zelensky, who attended the Leaders' Summit in Brussels, made it clear that he wanted stricter sanctions against Russia, though he also conceded for the first time that he was ready for talks with Moscow, be it in any format. Social media giant Meta, formerly known as Facebook, has cracked down on several surveillance companies and suspended over 1,000 fake accounts. These profiles reportedly trick people into revealing private data and use that as a trap to blackmail the Facebook users. Take a look.
Meta is cracking down on so-called cyber mercenaries. On Thursday, the owner of Facebook, Instagram, and WhatsApp said it's banned 7 private surveillance companies from its platforms and suspended 1,500 related accounts, most of them fake. Among them, a European company called Cytrox and Israeli firms Cobwebs Technologies, and also Black Cube, which deployed spies on behalf of disgraced Hollywood producer Harvey Weinstein. Meta said it sent alerts to 50,000 people, telling them they may have been targeted. The company accuses the 7 surveillance firms of hacking or using fake profiles to trick users into revealing private data. In a statement, Black Cube said it did not undertake any phishing or hacking, while Cobweb said it drew on open sources and that its products, quote, are not intrusive by any means. Other firms named could not be immediately reached for comment. Meta's announcement comes on the heels of a high-profile crackdown on spy firms like Israel's NSO Group, recently blacklisted by the U.S. government. The company hopes its ban will send a signal that the surveillance for hire industry is much bigger than just one company. It's also warned it will take action against other such companies when it finds them. Just hours after Meta's announcement, Twitter followed up with its own, saying it had removed 300 accounts from its platform.
The French foreign minister is in India for a 2-day visit aimed at boosting Indo-Pacific cooperation and defense ties. India and France's ties go back a long way. Paris is one of New Delhi's major defense partners. And in the latest, speaking at a virtual conference, the defense minister said that France is committed to the Make in India initiative by integrating Indian manufacturers into the global supply chains, adding that Paris is open and ready to supply more Rafale jets on India's request.
I'm sure that there is room for new developments. We, as France, are ready to answer any additional needs or requests that could be made by India. We are open and ready to provide any other Rafale if this is India's decision.
The minister described the use of Rafale jets by the air forces of both countries as a real asset and strength for bilateral cooperation. India and France inked the $9 billion deal for 36 Rafale jets in 2016. All the aircraft are being manufactured in France to Indian specifications. France has already supplied 33 Rafale jets to India, and the rest are set to be delivered by April next year. Earlier in the day, the defense minister also met with the Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi. The minister also met with the Indian counterpart Rajnath Singh. Friday is the main day of engagements when the two leaders are holding talks as part of the annual defense dialogue. Parley is expected to meet senior Indian leaders, including The National Security Advisor Ajit Doval, the French Defence Minister, also visited the National War Memorial in New Delhi, where she paid tributes to India's fallen soldiers. Parli also paid her respects to India's first Chief of Defence Staff, General Bipin Rawat, who died in a chopper crash last week. India and France also are key players in the Indo-Pacific, speaking on which the French Defence Minister said that Parli said both countries want to preserve the Indo-Pacific as an open and inclusive area, adding that it must be free from any coercion based on compliance to international law. Hollywood celebrity Chris Noth, who plays the role of Mr. Big in the Sex and the City franchise, might soon be in big trouble. The actor has been accused of sexual assault by two women in separate incidents in 2004 and 2015. We're leaving you with this detailed report. Thanks very much for watching.
Actor Chris Noth has been accused of sexual assault by two women who spoke to The Hollywood Reporter. The women, using pseudonyms, described sexual incidents with Noth in Los Angeles and New York in 2004 and 2015. The Sex and the City star has denied the allegations, asserting that the encounters were consensual. In a statement, Noth said, quote, "The accusations against me made by individuals I met years, even decades ago, are categorically false. These stories could have been from 30 years ago or 30 days ago. No always means no. That is a line I did not cross. The encounters were consensual." One of the women, using the name Zoe, said she was 22 when she met Noth through work. She alleges he invited her to his apartment building and later kissed her and had sex with her against her will. The other woman, using the name Lily, was a server at a New York nightclub where Noth asked her on a date in 2015. She said she later went with him to his apartment where they had sex, but she left feeling violated. Neither encounter was reported to the police at the time. Both women said that Noth's return to the Sex and the City franchise, in which he plays Carrie Bradshaw's love interest, had triggered memories of their experiences with him years ago. Meanwhile, exercise bike company Peloton has removed a social media ad it had released earlier this week featuring Noth's character, Mr. Big.
This is right, Arab.